Hello and welcome back to the Watford Way podcast. This time we are doing a Watford 2023-24 season review. I'm once again joined by Finn. Finn, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Lots to discuss today. It's the end of the season, Finn, and it's not been a particularly great season for Watford. Of course, we recently just found out that Tom Cleverley has been appointed as the new permanent head coach, which we'll touch on towards the end of this podcast, which, of course, you can listen to here on YouTube and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. But what we'll do today is we'll kind of run through the season in chronological order, and we'll start with the transfer window that happened in the summer and the January transfer window as well. Finn, of course, the season started with Valérien Ismaël being appointed as the Watford head coach at that point in time. When he was appointed, were you particularly happy with Valérien Ismaël coming into the club?
I wouldn't say happy, but I also wasn't unhappy. It was very Watford, if you know what I mean. Like
Yes.
he always seemed like a very Watfordy manager. His sort of career was sort of petering out. He's in Turkey. Thought we'll give him one last shot at English football. I wasn't overly excited, but I wasn't overly disappointed. I could always tell that it was never really going to work out long term, but I didn't. I knew a fair bit as someone who lives in Birmingham near West Brom. I knew a fair bit about him anyway, so
Yes.
I always knew he wasn't the long term answer, but I wasn't unhappy with him. And after the start of the season, after QPR, I was like, bloody hell, he's the second coming of the Christ.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, after the 4-0 QPR game, I agree. I was thinking, well, what the hell was going on here? Are we going to go on like a promotion run? And obviously, as we'll touch on in just a moment, it went very, very wrong. Probably after Christmas, really, Finn. But we'll look at the transfers that come in during that summer transfer window. Likes of Georgie Shaktadatse come in, Mileta Rajovic, Tom Ince, Reece Healy, Jake Livermore, and Jamal Lewis come in as well. Emmanuel Dennis later joined in January, which we'll discuss in just a moment. But aside from Dennis, Finn, looking at Lewis, Livermore, Reece Healy, Tom Ince, Mileta Rajovic, and Georgie Chatfidatse, have any of them signings been a real success for you this season?
I think it's another very Watfordy window. It was come the end of last season, there was so many glaring holes that needed fixing. Um, Goalkeeper, left back, midfielder, centre back, striker. And in fairness, we did go out and get a few of those positions, but the profile of the players that we brought in were never right. They were never going to work in the first place. And I think out of all the names you've just said, I think two of them, Chakvedadze and Livermore at a push, were good signings. Um, and for a club looking to get back in the Premier League, that just isn't good enough. We should never have expected to be in a promotion push come now sort of time. Um, with those signings, a 35-year-old Jake Livermore and however old Tom Ince is,
Yes.
they were never going to work. And £1 million striker from Sweden who no one had ever heard of, it was never
He
going
is
to
our top
happen.
goal scorer, Finn. I have to caveat it with that.
He is our top goal scorer, but he is also rubbish. So, um, yeah, it's another Watfordy summer. There was
Yeah.
glaring holes. Kind of filled them for a little bit, but like left back at the end of last season, we all knew we're like, Jesus, we need a left back, and we go out and sign Jamal Lewis, who on the face of it, a Premier League loan should have
Yes.
worked, but he's been very meh all season. Um,
Staying on
but
Jamal
yeah,
Lewis very briefly, I do believe he has a £4.5 million option in the deal if we choose to activate it to buy him from Newcastle. Is that something? I just sorry, Finn. I'm just laughing at your facial expression there. Is that something you would look to activate, Finn? I know your answer by your facial expression, but yeah,
£4.5 million.
yeah, I believe so. I believe that's what the agreement was originally in the loan deal.
Jeez. No, I wouldn't touch that with a barge pole. Honestly, for £4.5 million, you could probably buy three left backs better than Jamal Lewis.
Yes.
He's he's always kind of this is no dig at his professionalism or anything like that because I'm sure he's a top pro. Because to play at that level, you have to be. But all season, he's just looked lethargic and half-assed. Like he doesn't really want to be there, but he's picking up a wage, so he probably should. He looks like that kind of player. he's not even close to the Jamal Lewis we saw at Norwich. He looks scared when he's in the opposition's half. Um, I think it was last summer where there was Callum. It was like a toss up between Jamal Lewis and Callum Styles.
Yes.
Styles, right footed or not, would have been 10 times the player we at left back. It feels like every 50-50 decision we made in the summer, Jamal Lewis included, went the wrong way, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
But no, I wouldn't go anywhere near making that permanent.
Yeah, and I do agree. I think Geordie Chatford actually has probably been the biggest success from this season. Now, actually, in the summer thing, he joined on a loan deal, which we then made permanent in the January transfer window. Was that the right decision for you? Because yes, he's probably not scored or assisted actually as much as maybe we would have liked him to, but especially in his cameo appearances off the bench, he's had a real influence in changing games, hasn't he?
He has, yeah, and I think making it alone in the summer was one of the few smart things we've done recently. Having come back from a massive injury twice, um, it was smart because there's always a player there. He's very good on the ball. He might not have the yard of pace he used to have, but his technical ability and his dribbles through the pitch, there was always a player there. And making it permanent in January, having had him on loan previously, was smart in case you brought him in and he was not the player he used to be because of those injuries. But yeah, like you say, Czech Vidazia out of all the summer signings would be the one that I'd
Yeah.
want there next season. One
And I
of
think
many.
alongside Jake Livermore, I think Jake Livermore early on in the season, probably the start to the middle of the season, he had a big influence on that Watford team, didn't he? I suppose when Tom Cleverley's come in and towards the end of Valérien Ismaël's era at Watford, if you will, he didn't maybe start as many games as he would have liked, but I think we have to throw Jake Livermore in there as having a really good, influential season actually. Emmanuel Dennis Finn joined in the January transfer window. Split opinion in the Watford fan base. Some people loved the deal. Some people weren't so keen on the deal due to his alleged previous dressing room antics. Dennis has come in, Finn. You've seen how he's performed this second half of the season. How do you feel that sign-in for Watford has gone?
I think firstly, I'll say any rumours of him being bad in the dressing room, I think, are absurd because there is no way anyone who doesn't want to be at the club takes a 70% pay cut to play for them. So that's a ridiculous comment to start with. I don't entertain anyone who says that. And I think on the face of it, no, he's not been amazing, but you look a bit deeper and he's been playing with a groin injury for the second half of the season.
Yes.
And I think had he come in the summer off a fresh pre-season, I think we'd have seen a different version of him, and I think he'd probably been back to his best. But yeah, he's been all right. He scored some important goals. He's scored a very good goal against Leeds. Um,
Yes. What a
and
run. What a run that was.
yes, um, and yeah, I'd look if financially it was possible. I'd 100% look at keeping him on next season. I've always loved Dennis. I always have. He's like my type of player. He runs his arse off and scores goals. What more do you want from a striker?
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you there, Finn. Sticking on the Valerian Ismail subject for just a moment, because yes, he did play a big part in this season. He was awarded with a new contract in October, Finn, after a pretty poor run of form. I think a lot of us were surprised at the time, shall we say. I was pleased for him, obviously, on a personal level, but I think we were all surprised that he got the new contract. I think, if anything, we were maybe expecting Gino to be pulling the trigger at that time rather than giving him a new contract. Did you think that was the right thing to do? And was that kind of the catalyst for things to come later in the season, potentially?
I don't think necessarily it was the right thing to do, but again, I don't think it was the wrong thing to do. Showing support of the team manager is what we as Watford fans have been asking for years. But maybe doing it at that time wasn't the greatest idea. Extending his contract and then eventually sacking him means you have to
Yes.
pay more to get rid of him.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, he didn't start great. He took us on a really nice run over Christmas and over the winter. Um, but no, if he was still here now, I think we'd be a lot further down the table than we are. And the contract extension in itself, not a great idea, not a terrible idea. It's one of the, it's I'm going to use the word again. It's a very Watfordy thing to do.
Yes, I agree because I think for me, Finn, I was just baffled by the whole situation. As I said, I was really pleased for him on a personal level. I want people to succeed in their jobs, but he'd signed a 2-year contract in the summer, so there was literally no risk in Watford just letting him see out the season. Then actually, if we got to the summer this year and he done really well, then you could extend his contract then rather than extending it in October. And then, as usual, it goes wrong. We sack him, and as you say, we have to pay, a ridiculous compensation package to these managers. So, yeah, not great decision making by Watford. But as you say, you could potentially understand why they did it. Valerian Ismail ultimately was sacked. Finn, you mentioned we had a good run of forms prior to Christmas and after Christmas, Boxing Day. Really, it went wrong straight after that. Really. Really, really poor home form. Aside from the FA Cup victories at home, I don't think we'd won in 11 or 12 games under Valerian Ismail at Vicarage Road, which is such a terrible statistic to hear. And he was sacked in March. Finn, was that deserved?
Absolutely. I think he should have been sacked a couple of weeks before he was, to be honest. But with with management, I think I've seen a few people on Twitter say this: 90% of it's man management. And I think tactically, Ishmael wasn't terrible, and we saw that at the start of the season against QPR, Preston, and the rest of the nice wins we've had. But people aren't going to want to perform for you if they don't like you. I think that's where he fell down massively. If he'd have kept the players on side, they'd have kept buying into him and what his tactics were, then I think he'd have been a better manager for us. But at the end of the day, it didn't work out, and I think it was right for him to be sacked.
Well, there was a few incidents towards the end of his tenure. I think there was the Ryan Andrews incident where Ryan Andrews' dad, come out on social media and let's just say had a few choice words about how his son was being treated. And then, Finn, if you remember, during, I can't remember what game it was exactly, but I think Ismail Kone and Edu Kayembe were substituted about 20 minutes into that game as well. And Ismail Kone was very much unhappy with that decision. So yeah, as you mentioned, man management potentially was a problem for Ismail. And yeah, look, he was ultimately sacked as happens with a lot of other Watford managers. So he's not in a unique situation there. And yeah, we wish him all the best for the future. But ultimately, it didn't work out for Valerian Ismail at Watford. In his place, Finn, come a very young Tom Cleverley, who was previously in charge of the Watford under-18s. Now, I myself don't focus too much of my time on following the Watford youth teams, especially the under-18s. So to see Tom Cleverley handed such a big responsibility very early on in his managerial career come as quite a surprise to me. How did you feel about his appointment, Finn, at that time?
In total honesty, by the time he was appointed, I was a bit like, "Oh, season's done. Let's just get through to the end, see what happens in the
Yeah.
summer." Um, but I was happy for him. I don't know if you'll remember, but when we used to do watch-alongs during COVID, Klebs was always my favourite player, running around, running more than he needed to.
You like a
Um,
good workhorse in the midfield, don't you, Finn?
I do. I always like Dan Gosling for it as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was really pleased for Klebs, and having watched his interview when he first got the job, I was like, "Oh, I really hope this works out." Um, but yeah, when he started this head coach role, I was a little skeptical because again, his only managerial experience was with the under 18s, and it's a vastly different atmosphere, vastly different experience. Um, but he's come in. He looks to be doing well. He's got a few good results. Whether even with our running the where we're playing a lot of the top six, a lot of the top half of the table, promotion fighting teams, and we've held them and we've held our own and we've looked good. And I think while Cleverley may not be on Ishmael's level tactically and experience wise, I think he's the youngest manager in the top four English divisions
Yeah.
or something. Um, so he might not be on Ishmael's level tactically, but 90% of managing, like I say, is man management. And if you get all of your players buying into tactics, no matter what they are, they're going to work better because people are going to want to work for you. It's like Klopp at Liverpool. It's his way of playing is so intense and related around running hard and working hard. But his players do it because they like working under him. That's why he's been there for so long. So if you get a squad under you that respect you as a person, respect you as a manager, respect what you do, they're going to buy into it more, and it's going to work, whatever the tactics are.
And he's fresh out of the dressing room as well. Only recently retired, cleverly, after that injury he sustained last year. His record so far this season, Finn, as we record this podcast today, is 1 win, 1 defeat, and 5 draws. And as you say, we faced really top level opposition in that run. 5 out of them 7 games have been against the Championship top 7 teams, which shows the quality of opposition we've been facing against the likes of Ipswich, Southampton, Leeds as well. What's been your best performance under Tom Cleverley so far, Finn? Because I think for me, I wasn't at the game due to the train strikes once again in this country. But I think for me, the best performance I've seen so far was the 2-2 draw at home to Leeds. The pressing intensity we showed from the outset that day was incredible to watch. And as you mentioned as well, some great goals scored by Bakum Bio and Emmanuel Dennis in that game. Would you agree in that being the best performance you've seen, or do you have a slightly different opinion?
Yeah, no, I'd say Leeds was the best performance, but I do have a slightly smaller sample size as I've not been able to watch all of the games that he's managed for Watford so far. But from the ones I've watched, Leeds definitely, yeah. When kickoff happened, I was like, "This isn't Watford. What have you done with all of our players, and who are these people that are playing
Yeah.
football?" Because there was pressure, there was intensity, they were running, and people looked like they genuinely wanted to play for Watford. So that's what I mean when I say get get yourself a manager who is respected by the squad, and people will want to work for you and work hard for you.
Great words there from you, Finn. Now, today, as we record this video, it's been announced that Tom Cleverley has become the permanent head coach of Watford, which is great news to hear from a fan's perspective. From Sean Cleverley personally, is very proud to be the permanent manager of Watford Football Club. We don't know any contract details, Finn, so we don't know the length of the contract that he's signed, and I'm sure that will emerge in the next few days. But hearing that news earlier this afternoon, Finn, as we record this, I'm sure you were delighted.
Yes, I was. I'm like you say, on a personal level. He said in his first interview that he dreams of managing the club, and he dreams of doing big things with the club. And he's a Watford. He's probably not a Watford fan growing up, but I'd say now, having played for the club for so many years, captain the club, now head coach, I'm sure he's a Watford fan at heart. So to have that element in a manager is something very rare these days. You don't often get local people or people that support the club or have such a big affinity to the club managing so soon after leaving the dressing room. And I think the fact that it is so soon after leaving the dressing room is a massive bonus because he played with a lot of this squad. You got the likes of Backman, Porteous, Hoop, and Gakia. He would have known Andrews from the academy. I'm not going to list them all, but there's a lot that he's played with. So he'll know these players inside out, having worked with them every day for the last couple of years. That's sort of an invaluable experience to have as your head coach. And I hope to God, I've never hoped that a manager works out this much in all of my life of being a Watford fan.
Yeah, I think the last promising manager we had was another young English manager, and his name was Rob Edwards. And we sacked him after very few games, and he went on to do great things over at our good friends Luton Town. So, as you say, hopefully Gino, Scott Duxbury, and the Watford board back him adequately in the transfer window. Hopefully, they give him the experience around him that he needs as well. And yeah, hopefully next season, Finn, will be a good one to watch. Hopefully better than this season anyway. Quick question as well, because I was wondering this earlier actually. Obviously, Cleverley has vast experience in the game. He's an England international. He's played at Everton and Manchester United as well. And he's played over half his professional career games at Watford Football Club as well. Do you think his experience in the game and at the big clubs he's been at, do you think that he could maybe make use of some connections, maybe some Manchester United loanees coming over to Watford perhaps in the summer?
Yeah, I think he probably could because football's largely about connections, who you know, where you know them from. I saw someone say on Twitter earlier that Harry Amas, the former Watford youth product, was being targeted for loans from clubs in England, and I think that's the sort of thing where you've got former Manchester United player managing Watford and a former Watford player at Manchester United, so it just works perfectly,
Yeah,
that
that
kind of
works.
thing.
That works.
Whether it happens or not is another story, but I think Clevs also knows Sir Alex, worked under him for a few years. Um, I think that's another thing you'll make use of. You could see in his interviews as well, there's shades of Sir Alex when he said, oh, I can't remember who it was. But it was Jamal Lewis and I think it was Ryan Andrews. He said both of them were injured and out of contention for the next game, and they both started. It's
Yeah.
that sort of thing that you can see. You can see where it's come from. Um, but yeah, connections in football is everything. If he's got good relationships with clubs who have talented youth product that we can make use of, why not? Why not?
Absolutely. And I'm sure me and Finn and you guys watching are wishing Tom Cleverley all the best for his future career at Watford. And hopefully it's a long and successful career at Watford as well. Now, of course, Finn, this is the season review podcast and video here on YouTube. So we have to talk about our young player of the season and goal of the season. I've got 4 candidates here for young player of the season, and they're 22 years old or under, which I think is a fair statistic. 22 or under, I would class as a fairly young player early on in their professional careers. Now, I am cheating a little bit here because I put a poll out on Twitter a few days ago with these 4 players, and one player won the poll by quite a margin. But I'll ask you your opinion first, Finn, before I vote for my young player of the season. And I've got 4 candidates here. The first one is Ryan Andrews, his first full professional season at Watford. The second candidate is Yassir Espria. The third candidate is Matty Pollock, especially for his performances in this second half of the season. And the fourth candidate is Ismail Kone. These players are all 22 years old or under, and I certainly think they've all had their fair share of great moments this season. So you've got Andrews, Espria, Matty Pollock, and Ismail Kone. Finn, who are you going to vote for your Watford Young Player of the Season?
I think in terms of output and actual goals and assists, it must be Aspria. But considering the fact that for Ryan Andrews in particular, it's his first full year, but second year in professional
Yes.
football. I think whether he's not been incredible recently, but he's still been a step above some of the other fullbacks we've got at the club. Um, so there's an argument there. Matty Pollock as well. I forget how young he is because that man is a very shouty man. I can hear him when I'm watching on my phone telling there was a goal we conceded, I think it was against Leeds, where Matty Pollock was shouting, show him line, show him line. I could hear it, and I'm in bloody Birmingham. I could hear it out the window. Somehow he didn't show him the line, the fullback. I can't remember who it was. But I think a word goes out to
Probably
him
Jamal
there.
Lewis, Finn.
Probably. Um, uh, yeah, and I think a word should go out to him for how he's handled himself since
Yeah.
the January fiasco, asking to leave, then ended up staying. And I think he's done well, and I think he probably now is their third choice centre back. Um, he's made a real name for himself at Watford, and I really hope he stays this summer and fights for his place because he deserves one. Um, for Kone as well, again, I forget how young he is because he's had such an integral part of this, been such an integral part of this season. Um, Towards the start of the season, he played with such a maturity, which is rare in young central midfielders. They want the ball, they dribble, they pass, they do whatever. But Kone's always been sensible. He's known his decision making sometimes lacks, and I think that comes with age and experience. But he's been very good when he's been on it. Not so much the second half of the season. I think, like you said earlier about being subbed off after 20 minutes, I think that really knocked his confidence, as it
Yeah.
would any young player. Um, and I think sometimes Watford fans and maybe Watford club with themselves forget he's so young because we paid such an amount of fee, something like £4 million for
I
him.
think it was, I read it, I think it was about 8 million euros we paid for
Oh,
Ismail Kone. So, yeah, quite a high transfer fee compared to what we've been paying for players recently. Yeah.
yeah, so I think he's got that hanging over his head, but I think he's handled it really well and with a maturity that is rare these days. But I think in terms of actual output, it's got to be Yasser Asprilla. He's not lit up the championship as much as maybe I would have hoped. I don't know about any other Watford fans, but I thought he would have given a little bit more. But I think when you're a player of Aspria's quality, sometimes you try more extravagant passes, and the players you're playing with aren't on the same wavelength, and it might be difficult communication wise. But hey, he's made some incredible passes, scored some incredible goals, and yeah, I think he's got to be Aspria.
Yeah, and that actually matches with a Twitter poll I did the other day. Over 300 votes on that Twitter poll. For them four players that I just listed, and Yasser Espria picked up over 50% of the vote. And I have to agree myself with Finn. I think Yasser Espria's got 6 goals, 6 assists this season. So yeah, Finn possibly should have a higher output. I think there's been very nearly assists, you would call them, where he's played a lovely ball and someone like Bio or Rajovic hasn't finished a chance. But I still think for someone his age, is he still only 19 or 20 years old? I still think that's a pretty decent return in the Championship. So congratulations to Yasser Espria, the Watford Way's unofficial young player of the season. The next category, Finn, was a much easier thing to vote for. We haven't even got any candidates because I think it's quite obvious to most people, unless you're an idiot, who the Watford player of the season is. And I would probably not call it player of the season as such. I would more call it the most consistent player of the season, because in all the chaos that comes around Watford, this player in particular has been a consistent performer in that defence, on that left side of the defence particularly. And that player, Finn, is of course Wesley Hoot. I know you're a big fan of Hoot yourself. I think you've got a Wesley Hoot shirt actually, haven't
I
you, as
do,
well?
I do somewhere, yeah.
Yes. Finn, he is my player of the season. I assume he is yours as well. Talk to me about Wesley Hoot this season. He's scored some great goals, of course, as well. What a play. We're very lucky to have him at the club, aren't we?
Yeah, I think some people maybe don't think he's player of the season because he doesn't do the extravagant things. He doesn't. I don't know what extravagant things a centre back can do really, but yeah, you just always know what you're going to get from Hoot. You know you're going to get a 7 out of 10 performance, and yeah, he's got the odd mistake in him, but I think he makes up for it with the fact he's consistently a 7 out of 10. Most of the time, he's probably better. And I think what we have in his left foot, which is an absolute wand, is invaluable. The pings from one side of the pitch to the other. I think he's just a really good defender. That's all you can say about him. He's just really good.
He certainly is really good. And I think he actually calms everyone down. I watch him sometimes from the stands, and yeah, it's a calm presence on the pitch. So congratulations to Wesley Hoot. You are the Watford Way unofficial player of the season. The last category and the last bit of the podcast today is goal of the season. Me and Finn have chosen 2 candidates for this one. The first one is, of course, the man we just spoke about, Wesley Hoot, for his halfway line goal versus Hull City away from home. What a goal that was. And the second one is Yasser Espria's thunderbolt away at Norwich City. Finn, I'm going to come to you first on this one, as you are the guest. I have a feeling I know which one you're going to choose, but I'm not too sure. It's between Wesley Hoot versus Hull and Yasser Espria away at Norwich. What is your goal of the season?
Totally honest with you, I have no idea. I cannot choose between those two because you look at Hoot's goal and you think there's a centre back who's just shot from 40, 50 yards and it's gone in, and you're like, how the hell's that happened then? What's gone on? And then you look at a spree and you think, how's his tiny little legs kick that ball that hard? Because you just both of them were just so like, what's just happened? Like,
Yes.
how's that happened? Um, I think possibly who edges it, just purely because the run we're on, you thought that goal was going to be more important come the end of the season, especially now Hull are challenging for the playoffs,
Yeah.
and we probably should have been or could have been, and that goal could have been a massive goal come now, but in the end it wasn't. So it's purely off quality of goal. But I think Hoot does slightly edge it, but Aspria's goal, Jesus, I was a thunder. I can't think of a word. It was just thunder. It
I
was
can
just what
think
it
of a
was.
word, but it's not PG
Yeah,
worthy for this YouTube channel. So yeah, I think I know where you were going there, Finn. I'm going to vote differently to Finn. I'm going to go Yasser Espria away at Norwich City. It kind of knuckleballed in the air as well, watching it back on the replay. And yes, you could argue Watford lost that game, so the goal was meaningless in a way, but it certainly was a fantastic strike. So I think both goals are worthy of winning goal of the season. So yeah, me and Finn have chose one of them each there. Finn, it's been a pleasure having you on the channel this season. Thank you very much for coming on. We'll be back later on in the summer before the start of the 2024-25 Championship season. And hopefully Watford have signed a few more players before then. But Finn, thank you very much for coming on. Do you have any final words for the Watford fans before the summer? Of course, it's Euro 2024. You're back in England, of course.
Yes, of course. I'm no longer a Watford fan. I'm an England fan for the next
Yes.
3 months. But as soon as September comes, I'm back as a Watford fan, just to
Yes.
clarify. But yeah, have a good summer. Enjoy the Euros. And yeah, make sure you
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Finn. And thank you very much for watching and listening. You can, of course, check this podcast out on YouTube, and we're also available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. Aside from that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.